As you probably know, we are gathered here today to discuss something that many of us have been discussing almost non-stop for at least 2 years now, which is what were the causes of the financial crisis. There's no shortage of suspects, no shortage of theories as to what has just hit us, what hit us last year. And to start the ball rolling, we have a very interesting round table here. To start the ball rolling, I'd like to call on Shaukat Aziz, former Prime Minister of Pakistan.
Thank you for this introduction. I just have 30 years experience in banking and 8 years in government, so my views are colored by this background. Now, as we look ahead, what are the needs? What do we need to do? First of all, there has to be a massive exercise of raising capital. In this country, the United States, the regulators came in very quickly. They provided what markets couldn't provide to a very severely injured financial sector, much needed capital. Capital from the government is not without a price. So whenever governments get involved, that has advantages, but also has many disadvantages. In my humble view, it is not the job of governments to run banks. They should regulate and remain regulators. If they become owners or quasi-owners or micromanage institutions, you will see a lot of negative fallout. The successful government will create an atmosphere which will generate innovation, but there will be checks and balances. Deregulation does not mean abdication by the government. And in many cases, people misinterpreted it. Deregulation means freedom to operate with strong, it can only work with strong regulatory regimes. And a strong regulator is not a tough regulator, but a regulator who's as smart, if not smarter, than the people they are regulating.
Roosevelt once said, "The things that will destroy America are prosperity at any price, peace at any price, safety first instead of duty first, the love of soft living, and the get-rich-quick theory of life." These are wise words. I was very impressed by President Obama's speech to Wall Street last week. He clearly stated that the old habits that led us into the crisis are no longer acceptable. That's one of the reasons I'm so confident that at the G20 summit in Pittsburgh, we can take an important step towards the culture change that the financial sector so badly needs. Business as usual is not an option. It is time to put an end to ingrained imbalances and excesses. Stricter supervision, clear regulation, more transparency, better risk management, and greater integrity and morality. That is the path we must follow.
The crisis marks the end of the paradigm on the idea that the world is little more than a self-regulating marketplace, that the interest of a few ought to weigh more than the common good of humanity, and that the state is a necessary evil that must be minimized and ignored as much as possible, except, of course, when banks need saving. At this point, we will return neither to Keynesianism nor to neoliberalism, but do know one thing: the world requires strong states and regulations to prevent the collapse of globalization and to ensure prosperity for all. I have always said the crisis shows once more what we have always thought. We need better states or better governments and better markets. The international community has made an unprecedented effort to rescue the economy and has implemented reforms in the right direction founded on a new paradigm, but a similar effort to keep economic collapse from becoming social collapse has not been made, despite the threat of grave social consequences and the dangerous political consequences which remain present.
Let's just reduce the amount of risk in the system dramatically because we just frankly don't know what's going to come. I mean, is that basically where we end up?
Well, that's one viewpoint about it. The other one is that one should invest the effort which has been put into making fancier and fancier models of things which don't apply into an effort to make a better description of how things really are.
I go further. I tend to work, and have advocated for a long time, worst-case scenarios. Look at your portfolio and say, well, you know, the risk is too great. We've just got to close some positions. Of course, that is not what bankers, traders, or whoever want to hear. What should we do? We've got to simplify things. I think we've very much got to simplify things. You don't need all of these derivatives. for example. You don't need anything like that. People say, oh, you've got to have complex derivatives. If you don't have complex derivatives, then people can't hedge their risk. Well, you just have to look at some of the term sheets that these banks are producing. You think, what sort of weird cash flows the clients got that they need this particularly exotic contract? You don't need it. It's simplification.
The most important thing for any company and any individual is to take some risks. Now, the risks clearly have to be controlled, and I don't mean financial risks. I don't mean trying to encourage people to do crazy things that gets us into the same situation as we were before. But if we are to evolve and change and improve our world, improve our company, evolve and change as individuals, we have to continue to take risks. And that means having very brave managers who are prepared to allow people that room and freedom to do that within the constraints of not being crazy.
If there's one change, I cannot agree more with the notion that the financial system is terrifyingly over-concentrated at the moment. We are totally at the whim of the managers of a few enormous banks to carry on. Some of the winners are winners because these particular managers happen to have done a good job, but we're in the position of relying on them to carry on doing that good job for a long time. Given a choice between regulating them like so many water companies, which is the one logical alternative, or doing an AT&T style split of them, or perhaps doing it slightly more kindly by just introducing capital requirements that force them to split themselves up.
That the problem with capitalism is that it produces too few capitalists for its own good. And I think that if one can switch capitalists to entrepreneur, it raises a really interesting issue as to whether the system we have generates entrepreneurs or it generates people who are supposed to be entrepreneurs but actually don't behave entrepreneurially. And presumably a genuine entrepreneur is somebody who is able to tread a path that's in between those two, that is sufficiently interested in taking risks as to try new things, sufficiently cautious that he doesn't have a short-term view.